So I wanted to start by telling you, in terms of the eighth step of the Eightfold Path. So do we remember so far? Are we all on the same page here? Annabelle? Right view or right understanding is understanding. You could say so many different things about right understanding. The Buddhism would teach that it's the karma, understanding the law of karma, understanding. I'm not going to go through all of this, I promise. And if you go like to the Mahayana, the later Buddhism, I think that what they would say the right view is the sunyata, emptiness, that everything is emptiness. So, but anyway, right view and then right thought, having skillful thoughts. I think that was the one that Jane talked about. Thoughts of renunciation, benevolence, non-harming. I forget really. That's the third one. And then you go to the sila part of the Eightfold Path, the practice of ethics, right conduct, which would be speech, action, right livelihood. Last week, or the week before last week, we went into what is called the meditation part of the Eightfold Path, which is my favorite, your favorite probably. Right effort, right? You can't do it if you don't have the effort, the correct effort. And then right mindfulness last week. I like mindfulness. And then to the last one that the Buddha listed or mentioned is called samadhi. You've heard that word before? It's samadhi. And I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do the song, when the moon hits the sky, it's like a big piece of pie. It's samadhi. See, I didn't do it. All right, so I would like to say that of all the words that I know of in translation, and I suspect this is pretty close. I think that the worst translation of all of the Eightfold Path is samadhi. I mean, right understanding, you could argue that right view is better than right understanding. You could argue that. You could argue that right intention catches the meaning more than right thought, blah, blah, blah. But concentration, our English word concentration to describe samadhi is, it's like, saying that a serial killer, right, has a tendency to hurt people. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It doesn't get it. It doesn't come close to capturing the magic of it, the essence of it. Long time ago, 40, 50 years ago, this was a friend of mine told me, when he was a little boy, he came from a family, it's a pretty chaotic family, pretty difficult family situation that he was in. And so he told me this right maybe 20 years after that. And so you can imagine my ears. He said, he said, I just made a little room out in the garage so that I could get away from all that. And he said, I would just go into that room in the garage. And he said it was just this bare room. And he said, I would lie on the floor and stare at the light bulb. He said, maybe for an hour. I would just lie there and stare at the light bulb. Well, I said, you were practicing concentration. I said, oh my goodness. You were learning how to concentrate on an object. And then a second story about, if you go back about the same amount of time, this person had a kind of a heart. So, some of you know I had a fairly serious heart situation. So if my breath, it's hard to say how this was, but so if my heart would skip a beat, when my heart would skip a beat sometime, and it was I could be in school or I could be playing outside. This started when I was 10. My heart would go into tachycardia, and it would go from 65 beats to 220 beats a minute. It was once clocked at 3:20, I swear. That was in Florida, and that was very bad. But anyway, so I got very aware of my breath at age 10, right? Yeah. I mean, if you're right. And so sometimes when my heart would skip a beat, I could breathe it back into normal rhythm. I mean, right, I could stop it from going to tachycardia. So in other words, at a very early age, I started focusing on my breath, right? It's amazing. So we do these things. That was, who knows? I mean, I've always had a kind of awareness of the breathing because, as I said, because when I was young, if I wasn't aware of my breathing, I could be in big trouble. I mean, I have to go to the hospital and be cardioverted. It's not very pleasant. So I think both those stories, this little guy lying on the floor and looking at a light bulb, that's pretty unusual, isn't it? And this is someone who developed a pretty powerful mind. And then somebody else who has a kind of a heart condition, so you have to watch your breath. That's another form of concentration. It's different. And so I don't know if any of you had different ways of learning how to concentrate, but the truth is, as we've gotten older, there's a tendency to become more and more and more concentrated on the outside, on the I mean, do I need to say more? I mean, reading a book is concentrating on the outside, really. I mean, it's like you're experiencing it, right? But it's an external form of concentration, watching TV, listening to music, which is great. Eric listens to music. So these people in India, in particular, in yoga, in Hinduism and in Buddhism, started, a long, long time ago, 3,000 years ago, longer. They started this kind of idea that there's a way to train the mind to withdraw from the external world, from the senses, to withdraw from what the eyes see, what the ears hear, what the nose, it's called those are the five physical senses, and then the thought in Buddhism is called the sixth sense. And that there's a world available to you and to me a kind of like an unknown world, a world maybe perhaps beyond our imagination, that's just right there if we are able to learn how to revert and to bring that concentration that's always focused on the outside to whatever it is that is in there looking out. We're so focused on the subject looking at the object, right? This is the subject and that's the object. We're so focused on that. And in the West particularly. So then the Buddha taught that the key to reversing and to gaining mastery over your mind is to learn how to turn that concentration inward. And it's amazingly difficult to do, isn't it? Yes? No? Because we're not trained in any way. We weren't trained as children to do that. Our parents didn't train us to do that much. We didn't learn it in school, so it's pretty alien. It was certainly alien to me. I mean, I had that little advantage of watching my breath, but more than that, I was, ADHD from hell. So I certainly had very, very short concentration. Very, very short concentration. So I said that, that concentration is a very poor word for samadhi, because samadhi actually describes a moment when your mind literally has reverted. It really has turned inward. Now, you all have heard me say this over and over. Chinal is one of my favorite teachers, and he talks about tracing the radiance backwards. He talks about turning the light inward. I love that. Or let the light shine inward. If you really think about it, essentially we are endlessly shining the light outward. It's just true. We are sort of like a external, we're all shining out in a certain way. And some of you may find that kind of strange. Maybe you say, well, I don't have any light to shine. But the truth is, have a look at the brightness behind your eyes this moment. It's magic, really. We take it for granted, just this light that is coming out. I mean, it's like we're all like little suns in a way. We're all like little tiny pieces of the sun that are, we're maybe more temporary. I don't know if that's even true, but we are like individual little pieces of the sun. We shine, just like the sun shines. We're made of the same thing. We're all made of the same thing. So anyway, so just imagine that there's a light in you that you have been shedding outward for all of your life. All right, we've all been doing that because that's, as we say in Tennessee, because you don't know no better. And so then we start studying these scriptures and these teachings. And so then then we read these. So you go to meditation and something is going to happen that can be extraordinary. So so there you're sitting here and your mind's going a mile a minute. Does that happen to anybody? No, Travis. Your mind does not go a mile a minute. It goes 1,000 miles a minute. So that's the light going outward, actually. It's actually the radiance actually is actually going out. Now you say, well, wait just a minute, that doesn't make any sense. It seems internal, right? I mean, your thoughts are in your head, right? But it's not the same thing as the light going inward. So samadhi is when you stop thinking. That's why it's kind of I think kind of ridiculous to call it concentration, right? Because it's like I'll just give you these. In the teaching of samadhi, there's something called access concentration, or some people call it neighborhood concentration. I like that. It means you're in the neighborhood of samadhi. Okay? If you've been sitting for quite a while and you start really kind of suddenly getting very still, has you ever gotten, I love doing that, right? Have you ever, see, I would have been a great first grade teacher. Although, there would have been problems. Well, I mean, in terms of the separation, in terms of like the adult and the child. My mother was a first grade teacher and she was very good. That's the ADHD talking right now. So, it's really important to understand that if you sit and you sit and you sit and you sit and you work on this and you work on this, you start coming to a place where you will start getting still. I remember, Nicholas, you came about, it was not maybe a year ago, but you sat down and you just suddenly got very still. You were quite surprised. I don't know what it was, but I remember, and I looked at you, and it was really, I could see that you were just, you were in probably neighborhood, what's called neighborhood concentration, access concentration. It means that suddenly, for whatever reason, your mind, the light has turned inward, and your mind has gotten still. Now, and that could last 3 minutes or 4 minutes. It's not samadhi, but you're in the area of samadhi. And so if you do that and you continue to do that, and then you came back next Sunday. I'm just kidding. But if you do that over and over and over and over and over, at some point your mind one day will slip out of what's called access or neighborhood, and it will go into what's called samadhi. And in samadhi, there are a lot of ways to describe samadhi. So again, you see how it's foolish to call this concentration. Samadhi is called the unification. It's where the mind it just becomes unified. And so it's like, in other words, you couldn't possibly be in samadhi and say, well, what am I going to have for supper tonight? Or what am I going to do because that discursive kind of chattering mind is gone. The other way you know you're in samadhi, and this is like a great one, we've talked about the 5 hindrances. I've forgotten what they are, however. Do we know what the 5 hindrances are? Greed, desire. When's he going to ring that damn bell? That would be actually desire right there. If he doesn't ring that bell right this minute, I'm leaving. I'll just slip out very quietly. No one will notice me. Of course, I would. And then the other one, the opposite of it, is anger, right? Did anyone ever come to a sit with any issues of anger? I love doing that. I love doing that. I'm going to do that more often now that I'm getting in line. And then restless mind, agitated mind, worried mind is the third. And the other one would be the one that I can spot in this room in a nanosecond, Greg. I mean, I can spot it because here's the clue that you're in the fourth one, right? That sloth and torpor, it's called. Do you remember I told you all that we had somebody at a retreat in Temecula and she couldn't hear me and she thought I said sloth and torture? I just love that. I've never done that. I thought it was just wonderful. It was genie. So anyway, that's the fourth, and the fifth one is doubt. Right? Doubt is the best of all. It's pointless for me to be doing this. I'll never get good at it. He's talking about samadhi. What the hell is he talking about? I'll never get into that. That's too hard. My mind is too restless or whatever. That's doubt. And doubt is, of course, a killer. It's just an absolute killer. In samadhi, all of those 5 things are gone. Hello? There's not any question that you're in samadhi, right? I mean, you wouldn't be having I had this situation. I think I was in samadhi at the sit on Sunday. Well, I would just say, well, oh, really? Well, did you have any greed? Did you have any hatred? Did you have any restlessness? You can just knock them off. If they're gone, you're in samadhi. It's that simple and that huge, isn't it? I mean, just think about that. It's enormous. It's amazing. Because then think about the state of your brain chemistry if temporarily those things are gone. That would be called the brain will start purifying itself, you see, because it doesn't have anything bombarding it. It's a big deal. Yeah? So, I don't know what else to say. So it's extremely, in Buddhism, they made it, in my humble opinion, too complicated. I think the Theravada, they just got it very complicated. And I'm going to just say a little bit about it, and then I want to say something about Ramakrishna, who is one of my most favorite teachers. He was a Hindu guy. There's the Vedanta monastery that Annabelle goes to is Ramakrishna, and he was an amazing. I mean, when you talk about a holy person, I mean, Lord have mercy. He was in Calcutta, say like in 1840, 50, 60. He died maybe 1870, had throat cancer. He had 12 disciples. I love that one. With him when he died, but lying, croaking. This is terrible. I swear, I shouldn't be saying croaking. And he'd be walking down the street. This is the truth. You can see a picture of him, right? There are a few pictures. He could be walking down the street, and he would hear a bird chirp, and he would go into samadhi. And they would have, like, he would have attendants, and they would have to catch him, right? I mean, because someone had to hold him up. I mean, his hair would stand on end. His hair would stand on end. Right? I mean, music. I mean, almost anything would trigger him into samadhi. And so then the blood would rush up. You could see the blood rushing up in his throat. It's a very serious thing, children. That some people have even actually, I've read one person who suggested that even his throat cancer actually might have been coming because he was constantly in samadhi. That's just to say that none of us should really spend too much time in samadhi, okay? Heaven forbid you don't want to get throat cancer. Now, when I was experienced my hair standing on me. And I don't know if I've told you. Have I told you this? My throat was red for 9 months. It was just from the chest. It was just where the carotid artery is. So that was like the brain was. The brain was just sucking the blood up. I mean, it's really true. I mean, the brain was really taking in an enormous amount of oxygen and energy, and in the process of rewiring. That's scary, I suppose. Have I scared everybody off now? Are you finished with it? It's really. I mean, when you're talking about samadhi, oh, isn't that lovely? Well, let me go into samadhi. I mean, hello. Well, first of all, people would look at you like you're crazy if you did it on the street. But secondly of all, we know almost nothing about it in the West. We're just totally ignorant about it in terms of what it does to your nervous system. It clearly is something that is in our DNA, and probably what we're supposed to do eventually if we're going to ever survive as humans, which is certainly not clear at this point. Now, the Buddha would have said, Ramakrishna argued that, that he called it the salt doll, the S-A-L-T, salt doll. I can't speak words. He said that the little salt doll, he said it's a little doll made of salt, right? So it walks out into the ocean, right? Going out there to have a good time. Well, what happens to it in the ocean if it's made of salt? It just evaporates. Has a hard time walking back up on the beach because it's like the salt joins. So he used that to describe a samadhi. That in samadhi, you disappear. Wendy disappeared. And Ramakrishna believed that I'm struggling with this because it's not necessarily fair. I think this is what he believed. I'm not completely sure. But he believed that his experiences of samadhi, which were extraordinary and over a period of 40 years, and certainly in the different types of samadhi, but he believed that when you merge in that ocean, the infinite ocean, your mind downloads, shall we say, all the wisdom that you need. The Buddha did not agree with that. And this is like a huge difference in Buddhism and Hinduism, right there. That's a huge dividing line. Because the Buddha believed that samadhi is extraordinarily important, obviously. I mean, he went into samadhi. The legend is that he went into samadhi every day for a few hours, but he believed that it is not enough to develop these incredible powers of concentration. That mindfulness, this part that's constantly the wisdom part is separate from samadhi, and that it's the two together that is necessary to enlightenment. Huineng said, he said that samadhi is the lamp and wisdom is the light. And they're both, right? The lamp creates the light, but they're not the same thing. And the light, somewhat, the wisdom comes from this cultivating intelligence. So I read to y'all yesterday, those of you who were at the retreat, Nisargadatta said, I love this. He said, alert attention is the mother of wisdom. Isn't that beautiful? Alert attention is the mother of wisdom. So, so anyway, I just wanted to share with you that there are those in the Hindu religion who would argue that samadhi automatically brings on wisdom. The Buddha's story is, right, I mean, that he developed incredible powers of samadhi with two of the greatest teachers, but that they did not take him over into enlightenment until he really developed that faculty of wisdom. So I mean, I'm just sharing that. I don't know. I think that it'd be a mistake to say one person is right and the other person is wrong. And there's no question that Ramakrishna was one of the great religious figures of the past 200 or 300 years. So, the problem with talking about the eighth, yeah, I'm going to say this one more thing, and I'm going to pass out. The problem with this eighth one, no, I'm going to say this first, before I say that. My metaphor, those of you who have been privileged enough to read my book all the way through to the end, I cannot tell you how many people have stopped at the 12 Nidanas. I cannot tell you the number of people have called on the phone and said, I love your book. And I said, how you doing with it? Well, I haven't read it for about 3 months. They were, really? I said, I'm going to pick it up and finish it soon. I said, well, what happened? You know, I always notice that. It's like they get embedded in that part of the 12 Nidanas, which is about 4 chapters, and they never get on. I said, just skip that and go on, for God's sake. The end is very good. It's a great conclusion. So I've used this metaphor many times, and so I'm going to use it again, because I think that the truth is our consciousness, our essence, what you are, is like a lighthouse, and the radiance is, to some extent, you know, it is like a lighthouse in the sense, unfortunately, that it's always shining outward and rather than inward. But mindfulness is the light that shines, and samadhi is the mirrors in a lighthouse that magnify the light. You know, because if you look at a little light in a lighthouse, you know, you can say the little bulbs and say, well, that's awfully small, right? Have you ever seen a lighthouse? I mean, it's like the little bulbs. But then there are these huge mirrors in front of it, right? That magnify that light. The mirrors are the power of samadhi. So in other words, if the samadhi is what can magnify, in other words, that intelligence exponentially. It's amazing. It's amazing. So now I'll go back to what I was saying, that sort of like the problem of it is, and I really do mean this, we have almost no setup for it in our lives, in the West. Wendy just came back from, was it 10 days? And the retreat was based on what? Concentration? You wouldn't mean samadhi, would you? So she just spent 10 days in Spirit Rock working with the stages of samadhi. There are actually 8 stages, and that's, it's so complicated, it's ridiculous. And I would love for you to give us a Dharma talk after you debrief enough, after you become, like willing to be back in the world. But I want to just think about that, right? For most of us. How many of us are going to go off for 10 days and work on samadhi? It's, And so that's the problem with it. You can actually work with mindfulness, which is really wonderful. I mean, it's wonderful. You can work with mindfulness, the mindfulness of the body, to the feelings, to the mind state, and to mind object. You can just do that all the time, and it's wonderful, and it's good. But the Buddha tended to say that you also need that mirror, the set of mirrors that will magnify the mindfulness and the sati and sampajana, the part that of the mind that's going towards wisdom. And I will just tell you, the good news is that it's called vipassana, which is called the dry path, and it's probably absolutely true that a person can really get there by just totally working on mindfulness, more than mindfulness. But anyway, samadhi, which is synonymous with the word tranquility, how good is that? How nice is tranquility? Peace, bliss. Those are all symptoms of samadhi. So you can understand how developing that gives you, number one, a kind of the ability to keep going with this process, and also, it's one thing to be practicing mindfulness out there in the world, but then when someone makes you want to kill them, it's happened to me a couple times this week already. It is the samadhi part, that part of the mind that can go back and rest in tranquility, that is so helpful to mindfulness. So ultimately they go together, and I'll just say I don't know. I mean, for me, I have done more retreats than almost anybody I know. Personally, and all of them are about working on samadhi. I mean, one where you can't be sitting it for 1 month or 2 months or 3 months, right? You just can't do it and not be working on samadhi. It's not possible. So it's not clear to me how we do that, aspiring to sit every day for 30 minutes, which is wonderful. To aspire to do that, it's wonderful. But it's not necessarily so that that's going to really help you develop that unified mind, except over, say, 850 years, a lifetime or two. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I do know that the gradual path, which is vipassana, it's the gradual path that slowly over years your mind does go more and more into unifying. So maybe, when you get to be my age, maybe your mind is already going to be unifying. I think that's all I wanted to say. It's if you think about it, like right understanding, right thought, right speech, right action. Well, I've had something else to say. right effort, right mind. You understand, right, that samadhi is that samadhi is what really, really takes your mind and and it, in terms of right understanding. I mean, with that enormous ability to unify and concentrate, with right effort. I mean, whatever it is, whatever aspect you're working with in terms of Buddhism, to have this ability to for the mind to become one-pointed is it's everything. It's the ability for someone for a Christian to be in the Colosseum with lions and remain calm. You believe that's possible? I do. There's the stories of the Buddha, in his previous lives. I mean, there are stories where, like, one king got mad at him because his wife was looking. The Buddha was he was a bodhisattva. Then he was just sitting in meditation. But I mean, there's this story that the king had him, had his limbs torn apart, one after the other, and that he remained calm. If your mind had the capacity to be in samadhi, you would be able to tolerate unbelievable pain. Unbelievable pain. Now, you have to just say, well, I don't believe that. I know people who are have chronic pain, and it occurs to me, terrible pain, and it occurs to me over and over that the only thing that would really, really, really work for them is to have the capacity to go into samadhi. Because you do not feel pain in samadhi. So, because you are, your body has somewhat become just empty space. So it's something to aspire to, I suppose. It's something that absolutely each of us has the capacity. Every mind in this room is born with that ability. All you have to do is put your time on the cushion, I suppose.